We are rolling. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Oregon Fan Show, the podcast where we talk with Duck fans and college football experts about the things that make us want to shout. Our Sunday night guest is Chad Doing, host of the Rip City Drive on 620 AM Rip City Radio, and covering all really of Oregon State sports. That is, State of Oregon sports. Chad, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Oh, it's great to be here. I appreciate you, and I'm excited to talk ball. And most importantly, I'm just actually pumped up that we're, less than a week away now from college football. I think you understand this. People are crazed about football, and college football is my favorite. So I just can't wait for the season to get here and the games to begin. So this is a great time of the year for all of us.
Well, it's wonderful to have you on. I appreciate it. Chad, why is college football your favorite?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I was talking with someone today, actually. When you cover sports for a living, which I have for many years, I find that I get burned out on certain sports. And so what I've always tried to do was I never wanted to forget what it was like to be a fan. And so I always make an effort to go to different games and travel around to see different games so I can always have that fan feel. And so my best friend who lives down in Las Vegas, his name is Steve. We started going to Arizona State games back in the early 2000s. We just like to set up in Tempe. We like Sun Devil Stadium. And so he and I started traveling around and going to different college football games. And it's kind of grown into my favorite sport. Kenny Dillingham, who was a great coach at Oregon, offensive coordinator, really liked him when he was with the Ducks. And then when he went back to his alma mater at ASU, I really enjoyed following him to see him take over that program and see what he's done. And what I like about college football is that you have all these different towns where, whether you're in Eugene or you go to Columbus or you're in Tempe or you're in Boulder, each town, even though they're playing the same game, they all have their own local tradition for tailgating, game day experience. And I just like that aspect of college football compared to, the NBA or the NFL, where it's more of a homogenized product where the stadiums are all very similar. The game day product is all very similar, but in college football, it's different based on each stadium, city, town that you go to, which I think is what makes it unique.
I totally agree. I had a guest on this morning at 5 a.m., Andrew Baus, and his goal, his life dream was to visit every stadium in the FBS. And he's done 126. He's got 12 left. He's finishing this year. He's videographed the whole thing, and he's going to write a book.
Yeah, that is a great idea. And I just love traveling around and seeing different stadiums. And the best part is that I don't even have to have a vested interest in any of the teams that are playing. I just want to go and watch the game that I love and then take in the local surroundings and see how they do their game days. So I'm just college football right now is my number one. I'd put the NFL number two. Major League Baseball is climbing. I just went to a Dodgers series. Every year I take in a series, but ever since they sped up the game with the pitch clock, it's a very enjoyable product to go to. But right now, college football is strongly in the number one hole for me.
So exciting. And I'm with you. I will watch a MAC game. I will watch Hawaii at 11 o'clock at night if my wife will let me get away with it. It's all good. It's even wonderful to go to a place like McMinnville and see the Linfield Wildcats, have breakfast downtown on Main Street with the flowers hung on every light pole. And, you go down, there's still the band, the tradition, the fans, the people saying hi, the tailgate. It's just scaled down, and the players are playing because they love the game.
No, I love it. My cousin is an engineering student at the Colorado School of the Mines. And so I went back to Colorado last year, and they play their games at a stadium up in Golden, and they're one of the best lower division football schools in the nation. But you go up to Golden, and it was on a beautiful sunny day. The weather was perfect, and the leaves in the fall, everything was changing colors. And to see the local support in a small town for a small school like that, like I enjoyed that experience, the game day experience, as much as I have at many other the big schools that I've gone to. So I love it, man. Small school college football is fun too, especially in some of these programs in these undescript towns that thrive and have good programs.
The stadiums, the backdrops, it's all beautiful, and it's something to drink in. I mean, when you're there, you've got to really appreciate it.
I agree. And I think what I love is when you you get some of these fan bases like Ohio State or Michigan, some of the big schools, when they make their trip to Autzen for the very first time, like they hear about how great it is, but then when they come in and they're in the middle of it with the noise and the intensity, they walk away with a certain appreciation. And so I love getting that type of feedback from people that come to big time college football here on the West Coast. It's pretty awesome.
I'll always remember that image of the Ohio State fan with his hands over his ears.
Yeah, because the stadium, the way Autzen's designed, it's very unique to where that sound, the fans are so close to the field, and it's just thunderous in there, and people, until they've experienced it, they just haven't really been in those type of environments before with that type of noise pitch. It's pretty sweet.
58,000 people, and it's not piped in. It's just the acoustics of the building and the love between that community and that football team.
Yeah, it's special, and it's been like that for a long time, and it's a perfect example of why we love the game of college football so much.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, the Duck fans, they earned it. I mean, a lot of people think of the Ducks as new money and this team with a lot of Nike money and so forth. But there was a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and adversity that went into building this program. Rich Brooks built it from the dirt.
He really did. I have so much respect for the work that Brooks did, and then to see each coach after him and how they've continued to take the program to the next level. But you're right about the fans. Like, there are certainly new money fans who have been around since the Chip Kelly era, but there's still a lot of long-term season ticket holders that go back to the Rich Brook days, and they've continued to support the program with the same type of passion that you see today. So that's part of what makes college football great, especially in Oregon, because most of the people here, as you know, they were born here, the majority. They either went to Oregon State or Oregon, and then they laid roots down here and started their families. So you have that unique connection between the schools and the fan bases here, which I think is what makes it nice.
I totally agree. One thing that's a big factor in that, in this state, it's a little bit like Alabama. And then when you live in this state, you've either got to be a Beaver or a Duck.
Yeah, exactly.
For me, I chose, when I was about 12, 13 years old, the Beavers were 3 yards in a cloud of dust, right? They had Earthquake Enyard and Steve Andros, the great pumpkin. And the Ducks, man, they threw the ball. They had, you know, Ahmad Rashad, Bobby Moore. They had Greg Newland and Bob Newland and Greg Specht and Dan Fouts throwing the rock. They were fun. They put the ball in the air.
Yeah, no doubt. I grew up in Oklahoma. I spent my first 9 years there, so I was a big Barry Switzer and Sooner fan. But they ran the wishbone, and they just ran the football 98% of the time. So I always enjoyed getting a chance to flip on the TV and watch different schools like BYU, or like you mentioned, some of those earlier Oregon teams or the Miami teams, because they were throwing the football at an alarming rate. And as a youngster who had watched a lot of the wishbone, I was like, hey, I'm okay with the wishbone, and I love Barry Switzer, but I'm okay with this wide open passing attack too. Like those, you mentioned those games we used to watch at night. You know, ESPN used to have the WAC games on at night, and Hawaii and BYU would come on, and these teams were throwing it 85% of the time. I was like, what in the world's going on? This is awesome.
Yeah, and the Rainbows had that great run of quarterbacks, Timmy Chang and a couple other names I can't remember off the top of my head, but they were just so fun to watch.
Yeah, I loved it. I love it too, because you know, college football has been like that for quite some time, where, you know, now we're seeing a lot of the same type of offenses, but back in the day, depending on the school, each university had a certain identity in terms of their attack and how they would play. And so it was fun to get exposed to the game and see the different approaches and realize that, you know, there's so many different ways you can win the game of football. And really what it comes down to is, do you have the players, the talent to be able to make that happen?
That's something that I really appreciate about the game. You spoke earlier about how homogenized the NBA and the NFL are. In football, in college football, there's all kinds of different styles, you know, different personalities, and the coach has way more influence on the personality and identity of his team, which makes it really fun.
Yeah, that's I agree with that. You know, it reminds me of the days when, you know, Chip Kelly had his identity on the Ducks, and they were running their spread, their warp speed offense with the speed, and yet they would match up with a team like Stanford and David Shaw, and they were lining up with 12 and 13 personnel, multiple tight ends, and looking to run it with 3 yards in the cloud of dust. Two different styles, both very effective, and both ways that you can win games depending on the players that you had, which is, I love the contrasting styles. It makes it cool.
I completely agree with you. Again, I just keep agreeing with you. That's really bad radio. But those Stanford teams, man, styles make fights, right? Yeah. And these were two teams, as you said, with completely different styles. The Cardinal would line up with sometimes 8 offensive linemen in the formation and just bludgeon you.
Yeah. And I think that's it really speaks to how we've seen the Oregon program change over the course of time, where, before, the way you beat them was knowing they didn't have the top line talent at the line of scrimmage or the depth to match up. You would try to, be physical and win the battle at the line of scrimmage and control the football. But now, with what Dan Lanning has done, recruiting really well, using his resources, attacking the transfer portal, and now the Ducks all of a sudden have top-line talent at the front. But now when they suffer injury, they've got great talent that can come in off the bench and be able to sustain the team as they deal with those injuries. So, and most of that, a lot of that's at the line of scrimmage, which is the most striking difference that I see with the Ducks today compared to, what we had back at, the early 2000s or in the Chip Kelly era. It's just a different level of talent and more depth, and that's what you got to have to be successful in college football.
They've got a pair of freshman offensive linemen, both basketball players in high school, both of them coming in at about 6'6", 360. Tommy Topi and Emmanuel Ihanacho, 4- and 5-star players, guys who have been through the clinics and the camps and the elite level competition at all-star games for 3 years. And Duck fans are really excited to see where they fit in the rotation on that offensive line. But just the number 6'6", 360, Oregon didn't used to have players like that.
No, I remember going down and covering that national title game against Auburn and being at different places for practices where you see the Ducks and then you go over and see the Tigers. And the most striking thing to me was you would see the Tigers and you're just blown away by the overall size of their players and their athletes compared to the Oregon squad. But now the Ducks can line up with anybody and be able to compete man for man physically. It's just a difference in terms of talent, in terms of what they're being able to access recruiting wise, the different regions in the country. And, it's been the same way since we were kids, right? The teams that win and compete well, they do it because they're able to control the line of scrimmage. You got to be able to win at the point of attack. And if you do, and you do so successfully, you're going to have a chance to compete for championships. And that's the big difference for the Ducks now, is that they've got the players up front on both sides who can get the job done. And it's exciting to see that now. 6'6", 300+ is wild. That's a wild number, but they've got those guys now.
Yes. And on the defensive line, they've got 4 NFL players who came back for an additional year.
Yeah, it's so great to see. I think the Ducks, what I love about the squad this year is that, one, that defensive front returning intact. They got one of the best secondaries in the country. They've got one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Great speed on the outside, but a lot of continuity. A lot of guys returning who were part of the squad last year. And when you have that type of continuity, that's going to allow you to get off to a better start. It's going to allow you to be more effective in your offense because guys understand one another, their positioning, the offensive line continuity, all of those things, come together, and it puts you in a position where you can have success, especially when you hit those, parts of the schedule where the games are going to get tough. So I love the continuity. I love the overall talent base, but when you've got arguably the best defensive front in the country with everyone returning and one of the best secondaries in the country, they're strong up the middle. Like this team, again, you got to go out and prove it, but on paper, talent-wise, one of the best teams they've ever had. There's no question about that.
You got to go out and prove it. It's a 16-game grind all the way to January 25th at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. What do you see as standing in their way? What's the area where they really need to grow?
Well, I would say a couple of things. One, with the Ducks, I'm always looking for great balance on offense. So, being able to run and pass and have balance on offense, minimizing turnovers, I think that's going to be key. Avoiding serious injury, But outside of that, it's just a matter of continuing to improve week to week. And what I think Dan Lanning's done a good job of is he coaches his guys up. I've been very impressed with how he's improved as a coach, not just working with his players in practice, but also his between the lines decisions in games. I think he's more sound in his decision making, but I just don't really see any type of weakness with this squad. So I think for them the key is just continuing to prepare week to week, staying on top of your business, and if they do that, they're going to have great success. And Lanning continues to get better year by year. So really, what we're talking about is for the Ducks, I think, is preparation for 2 or 3 big games this year to put themselves in a position to win the Big Ten. I mean, the USC game early is going to be big. Obviously, the Ohio State game is going to be big, but the schedule, I think, sets up pretty nicely for them to be in a position to win the conference.
It always annoys me when the memes and trollmakers talk about how the Ducks always choke, right? Yeah. They always choke in the playoffs. And Dan Lanning is 48-8. He's 40 years old. How much choking has he actually done?
Yeah, exactly. I think for the Ducks, I mean, really, if you look at it the last couple of years, I don't look at it as choking. They just run into some of the best teams in college football. Last year, they ran into Indiana, best team in college football. They ran into Washington a couple of years ago, who was right up there near the top, one of the best teams in football. The teams that they have lost to, whether it's Ohio State, Washington, or Indiana last year, we're talking about the best teams in the country. So the way I look at the Ducks now is like, if you continue to improve, which they have, if you continue to recruit and use all your resources to get the roster where you want it to be, then you keep knocking on the door, eventually it's going to open up for you. They keep putting themselves in a position. Dan Lanning is continuing to make strides year to year. And I just think that if you continue to knock on the door, eventually it's going to open. So I like where they're at. They've just had the unfortunate luck of running into the best teams in the country, Indiana being the latest version of that.
Yeah, the best teams in the country that were really dialed in. It was just their year. They had the right guys and the right mindset. They stayed healthy and made big plays when they needed them. Indiana's run last year, incredible. Yeah. Ohio State's run through the playoffs the year before, incredible. All you got to do is great game, guy, great team.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are we looking at on the schedule this year? And you've got the early game at USC, and then they've got the game later in the year at Ohio State. Those are the 2 big games on the slate for me. Outside of that, everything else looks pretty manageable. Obviously, there's always that one game that ends up being closer than what you think, but I think we're looking at 2 games that will end up determining where they're going to slot in the Big Ten race. I mean, clearly, outside of serious injury, they're going to be a playoff team. So, again, the key is just putting yourself in a position where you can be playing your best ball late in the year. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, in terms of the schedule, Chad, they get their bye early after the USC game before they play UCLA, I believe. It's either before or after UCLA, but it's right there. After the bye, they have 8 games in a row, including after that Ohio State game, which you very correctly pointed out as the big one. They return home to play Michigan, an improved Michigan team, always physical, under new coach Kyle Whittingham. And that one strikes me as one that, you're coming off either a big win or a big loss at Ohio State, traveling 2,000 miles to the Midwest. And then you got to come back, change the page, and face a Kyle Whittingham team. That potentially could be tough.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I have so much respect for Kyle Whittingham and the way that his teams, compete and the way he prepares them. I agree with you. That's a situation where whether you win the Ohio State game or you lose, you could come out flat the next week. And the one thing we know about Michigan under Kyle Whittingham, they'll be physical. So I think that's going to be a tough game. And if you win the game at Ohio State, there's always that setup for a potential emotional letdown. So we'll see what happens. But you're right, that bye comes after the USC game, right before the UCLA game. And if I had my pick, I would always prefer my bye week to come mid-season or just after the midway point, just because to keep yourself up and continue to battle for 8 straight weeks, sometimes attrition can take place with the injuries, and you just want to have a chance for your team to be healthy and not, mentally and physically exhausted. So it is going to be more difficult for them deeper in the year when they're playing teams like Ohio State or Michigan without that extra benefit of the rest.
Chad, this week I talked to Matt Zemek of Trojans Wire, writer on the USC beat, and he had a suggestion. He said, college football is crazy. There's this huge sports void on the calendar in August. They need to start playing games. Instead of week 0, it ought to be middle of August, and you're playing some interesting games the second or third week in August, the third or fourth week in August. Ramp up the season a little earlier, create another bye later in the year, because player safety is a big deal, right? We're all supposed to be caring about that. Just make it a little more manageable, and get college football in front of fans when the NFL is playing boring exhibition games and the WNBA is arguing about politics.
I agree. And why? And if you do that, if you were to start the season sooner, then maybe you could wind up in a situation where you get the playoffs started earlier, and maybe you could wind up finishing on New Year's Day. I would be very open to starting the season earlier in hopes. I have this dream of the national title game being played on New Year's Day. I think that would be great. Reminds me of all the big games around New Year's Day when we were younger. So if they could do that and fit in another bye week and get some more rest for the guys, then I'm all for it. I'd have no objection with that whatsoever.
Well, Chad, I have to thank you. You're being very gracious, because a couple of times during our conversation, you have said phrases like "when we were kids."
Yeah.
You and I were not kids at the same time, but I think we have some of the same memories.
We do. I loved, for me, and I was just thinking about this last night, because I'll get stuck in a YouTube vortex and I'll pull up old games or things that come up. But really, for me, my first connection to sport was college football, because when you grow up in Oklahoma, there's only 2 teams. It's Oklahoma State. It's Oklahoma. Unfortunately, my dad went to Oklahoma State and he graduated from there and did his graduate work there. So he always wanted to take me to Cowboy games and didn't want to take me to Sooner games. But the Sooners with Jamel Holloway and Barry Switzer won the national title in '85 against Penn State. And I had a chance to watch that. And then I became hooked. And then every year it was Oklahoma, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska. And so I just got into all of the big games. And in fact, interesting, I still think the best college football game I've ever seen, my favorite game of all time, was the '88 matchup, Catholics versus Convicts with Notre Dame and Miami, where Notre Dame got the win. They went on to an unbeaten season and won the national title. But I have so many great memories as a youngster growing up and watching the game, and then, watching different great players like Bo Jackson, or what I think is the greatest individual season, Barry Sanders in '88 when he won the Heisman with Oklahoma State. And then as time goes on, you get a chance to watch those teams. Like locally, that 2010 Oregon team that went to the national title game was a special team that went unbeaten. It came real close to winning the national title. The 2 years in '08 and '09 when Oregon and Oregon State played for a chance to go to the Rose Bowl, those certain big moments that stand out to you that you remember, and you cherish those moments because they were big moments, but how much fun you had getting together with your friends or family to watch those games. I love it.
Absolutely. We might see a rematch of, we will see one rematch of Catholics versus Convicts
this year.
November 7th.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
They might meet again in the playoffs.
Yeah, both those teams. Notre Dame. So I had Phil Steele, when I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, he's got Notre Dame pegged as the eventual national champion. And then I talked with Brett Ciancia, Pick Six Previews. He's got Oregon winning the national championship, but there's no question. Miami, Notre Dame, Oregon, Ohio State, all of those teams are going to be in the mix come playoff time, which is going to be fun. We'll have some big brands in there, some big names, and but Notre Dame's going to be legit this year for sure.
Totally, and they have a favorable schedule. They've got
always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've got the Canes, and they've got BYU and SMU, and the rest of it looks like kind of a cakewalk.
Yeah, I think of all the teams at the top who are vying for a championship, I would say that Notre Dame has got the most favorable schedule. And, it changes year to year for teams. When you have that setup where you've got the favorable schedule, you've got to go out and take advantage of it. So if they do, then they'll put themselves in a good position to get one of the top seeds in the playoff tournament. And then, we'll see how things shake out from there.
Yeah, CJ Carr could win the Heisman. If he doesn't, maybe Darian Mensah does. I mean, obviously,
Mensa. I
yeah.
was impressed with him. I'm anxious to see him this year because in the games I watched him last year, he's got good touch on the football, good presence in the pocket, and he can move around and make some plays. So I was impressed with his playmaking ability last year.
And the Stiff Arm Trophy loves a dual threat quarterback. Those big
Always,
numbers.
they always have.
Yeah,
Yeah. I like
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And Oregon's got themselves a nice dual threat quarterback. So I'm, there's going to be some good signal callers. I'm anxious to see what Sam Levitt from Westland, Oregon, went to Arizona State, transferred to LSU. We'll see what he can do with Lane Kiffin down at LSU. But there's some good talent at quarterback this year in college football.
I saw Sam play in high school, and he was a little bit of a late bloomer. He was a good high school player, but he was maybe a 3-star kid, and Kenny Dillingham did a great job of developing him. And he's got moxie. He's kind of the tough kind of quarterback, the Joe Cap kind of quarterback.
I like guys like that. I like quarterbacks that don't shy away from contact, that can fire up their teammates like that, and the moxie where, if things break down on a third down and you got to be able to run and scramble and pick up some yards, you can do that. I like guys that I like my quarterbacks to be a little bit nimble and be able to take off if needed. Because sometimes you can draw up the perfect play, but when the real bullets start to fly, you realize we got to make something happen here, and they can do it.
Well, your Denver Broncos and Bo Nix. Nix had a pretty good outing this weekend, his first NFL action in the exhibition season this year.
So great to see him being able to play and look healthy, and how he was so great at Oregon. And it's been nice to watch. Recently so many great Oregon quarterbacks go on and have success in the NFL, but they've done such a good job in being able to find guys. Dylan Gabriel was terrific. Bo Nix has been sensational. Dante Moore has been terrific. A lot of great quarterbacks at Oregon, and Mariota's carved out a nice career for himself as well. So it's pretty exciting to watch. Bo Nix he's terrific. Everything you want in a franchise quarterback: the work ethic, the attention to detail, and the guys seem to like him. But been very productive over the first 2 years.
I also like about all those quarterbacks you mentioned. I'd maybe add Justin Herbert to that list.
Oh, I love Herbert. Awesome.
He reminds me of Dan Marino in the way he throws the football.
His arm strength, accuracy.
Yeah.
He's everything. He is he's going to continue to take knocks until he has some success in the playoffs. But I just think that, he's like the perfect quarterback. He's everything you want. He can do anything with the football. Jim Harbaugh obviously respects him, but his accuracy, his playmaking ability, the arm strength, his understanding of the offense, super smart. He's got toughness as well. Yeah, Justin Herbert's perfect. It's great.
The dude finished the season with a broken wrist and a cast on his arm.
Yeah, that contraption they put on him so he could still play was amazing, and yet he went out there fearlessly and continued to compete. So I loved him at Oregon. I loved him in high school. He's a special individual. Justin Herbert's a stud.
Yeah, I agree. His problem is that he doesn't have anybody in the interior of the offensive line. He might end up with another broken wrist.
Yeah, they just put I think their center just got put on IR for an injury suffered this weekend. Hopefully both their tackles who were hurt last year, Slater and Alt, will be back at 100%. But if he has time and protection where they can have balance in the offense, and he's not I think he was hit more than any other quarterback. 60. I think he was hit. The number is, I think he was hit 60% of the time on dropbacks. You can't have that for your franchise quarterback. That's too much.
You got to protect 10. I mean, you just have to.
Yeah. And Harbaugh knows that. So they just need those guys up front to stay healthy, especially the tackles, and he'll be okay. But Herbert, he's one of those guys that I root for because I like him. I like the person, and I want to see him have success. And I want him to have some playoff success so he can get the detractors off his back.
Yeah. I think Mike McDaniel will help him a little bit too. I think he's a bit of a quarterback whisperer. Aggressive in his play calling. They'll look to attack early, and creative in his design, to where I think he's good at taking guys and saying, okay, what does this guy do well? And then they'll run those plays. So whatever he asks Herbert to do, it'll be things that Herbert has,
confidence in terms of the throws he's going to be asked to make and the plays they're going to look to attack with.
Well, it's a golden age of quarterbacks in both college football and the NFL. We're going to have a lot of fun when that ramps up. Chad, there's one thing I've always wanted to ask you as a longtime listener of your show.
Yep.
I followed you as you built your career going back to the days that you used to record corny songs for the Jim Rome show. And,
it's true.
Yeah, but you always have had fun doing it. But one thing I've always appreciated or sensed in you, listening to you on the air, is the humanity and sincerity in the way you do your job. You don't rip people all the time. You don't have the hot takes. You're not screaming into the mic. To me, you're a throwback to the sports writers that I admired as a kid, guys like Jim Murray and George Passero, guys who had an appreciation for athletes and their achievements. And where does that come from in you?
That's a great question. I think a lot of it comes from, the people that I grew up around when I first was an intern and learning in the business. And the biggest thing the biggest piece of advice I got from two different people, one being John Phillips, who gave me my first opportunity, he just said, hey, whatever you are as a person, be that person. Don't pretend to be or fake somebody else, because you don't want to be a phony, because everyone can sniff out a phony. And so I thought, okay. So once I developed a little more confidence, I just realized this is who I am. This is the way I've got to be. And what I've realized about audiences or listeners is that they're really smart. And so they can sniff out anybody who's not being genuine or authentic. And so I've just always tried to respect that. And my thought is if someone's going to take the time to listen to me on a daily basis, then I owe it to them to be transparent and open and just try to be myself. And so I do that. And, I've learned too that, if there's days where I'm happy, then I let that shine through. If there's days where I'm, maybe irritated or ticked off, then I don't try to hide that. I just kind of let it come out on the radio. And so I think when you do that and you share your life, that people appreciate the authenticity. And the cool thing is that we're not always going to agree. And I've had people hit me up and say, your take on this is bad, or I don't like this or whatever, but at least I know I'm being honest. Right. So I think that's the key. And so I just try to do it like that. But really what I love about sports is that it's one of those things that still brings us all together. Even if we argue about a game or a player or whatever, it's like the cool thing about sports is you and I can go to a game. Let's say we don't know each other and we sit down together at a football game or a basketball game, and we could be on opposite ends of the political spectrum, but 5 minutes into the game, we're high-fiving because we're cheering for the same team. I like the togetherness that sports brings, where you can bond over that common, player or team or whatever. I think there's something unique about that, right? So I remember going to a Washington 97, first time I went to Husky Stadium for a game. A friend of mine was a big Husky fan, and I despised them, but I went to the game because they were playing Nebraska. September game up at Husky Stadium in 97. And it was cool because I was sitting around a bunch of Nebraska fans, and there was some Husky fans mixed in, but it's we were all having conversation and just enjoying the fact that we were watching the game together. And the Nebraska fans were some of the nicest people I'd come across. So I was like, this is kind of cool how we can all come together like that and just enjoy the game. It's there's a certain community that sports brings, which is really cool.
That was the reason I started this little radio podcast. For me, it was an experiment in listening and connection. And the Oregon fan base and college football fans in general, it's a special kind of community for just some of the reasons you said. And I love the rival fan bases that are respectful, that have a little grace about them.
Yeah,
I think about the fans at Tennessee, for example, were really that way. Even the fans at Auburn were, for the most part. I don't like the guys who have to pop off and get in your face and and all that. That's just necessary.
Dude, it's cool. It's so cool. At that, you remember back, I think it was the start of the 2011 season when Oregon played down in Dallas against LSU. I went down for that game, and before the game, there were a bunch of Duck fans and Tiger fans who were all tailgating together and just having a good time, right? Because those Louisiana boys are so laid back and chill that they're just offering up Crown Royal and fried food to whoever wants to come by and enjoy it. And so I just like to see that, man, because people are just celebrating together. And yeah, it's pretty sweet. But what about you? What about you, Dale? What was your first experience going to a game like that got you hooked? What's your earliest memory that you can think back to?
The first game that I saw live, and back in the day, Oregon wouldn't be on TV more than once or twice a year. But the first game I saw live was the year that Bill Musgrave engineered an upset over USC. Ducks jumped out to a big lead. They're up like 21-0 or 28-0 on USC. And Roland Putsier is putting Rodney Peete on his back every other play. And in typical Duck fashion, USC made a comeback and they had to win in the last minute, and it was a nail biter. But just to have that experience, that glimmer of hope, Oregon hadn't been to a bowl in like 25 years at that point, hadn't been to the Rose Bowl in 37. But to have that day where it was sunny, and just like you said, everybody around is saying high five. And Chad, when I walked into the parking lot after the game, I heard a word that I never thought I would hear in Autzen Stadium.
What's that?
Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
People were, it was like the fourth or fifth game of the year. There was a lot of football to be played. And I think Musgrave ended up getting hurt, and the season turned out to be something like 6-6. But people at that point could see, hey, we can compete with these guys. We don't have to get our doors blown off 58-3 by Nebraska or Oklahoma or Ohio State for a paycheck. We can be a football program. Then Mr. Knight stepped in, and they developed some energy and continuity and so forth, built some facilities, got some better players. And now, holy smokes, I hear people saying this is natty or bust. If Oregon doesn't win this year, it's broken. But nah, after everything that's happened, everything you've been through, after all that history, this is gold. This is joy.
Yeah, I would love for them to win a national title before Phil Knight passes away, because I know how much it would mean to him. But when they finally do get over the hump and win the title, it's the people who have been around to see the process, you're going to look back and appreciate the work and the time and the effort that went in to make it happen. And it's, like I said, they're close. They're so close right now to getting over the hump, and to do it, to see the way that they've continued to build the program and where Dan Lanning's got it now. I mean, it's pretty amazing to be a Duck fan now, because you go into every season knowing that you're a legitimate, contender for a national title. Like who would have ever thought that the Ducks back in the day, back in the mid 90s, would be in a position to where every year they're expected to contend for a national title. That's wild. It's great progress.
It is wild, because back in those days, just before Musgrave, they would be in the crummy game of the week, in the bottom 10 every week.
Yeah.
They were a laughing stock.
And so I give a lot of credit to Rich Brooks. He laid the foundation. Mike Bellotti had the wherewithal to go out and find an unknown name, and Chip Kelly, who took the program to new heights. 4 straight BCS bowl games was a ridiculous mark for Kelly. And then after that, we saw, guys come in that really changed the way that they started to recruit, including Mario Cristobal. And then Dan Lanning, the hire that no one wanted and didn't even know about. You remember after, Cristobal took off, they wanted someone local that was part of the Ducks family. Credit to Rob Mullins for going out after Dan Lanning. And because of his ties to the Southeast and the way he's been able to recruit, he's changed the entire trajectory of the program. So it's been a lot of people that have put in work over time, and now they're right on the precipice of winning a national title, which is pretty sweet.
2027 recruiting class has players from 17 different states,
Huge.
Including Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, New Jersey, all over the South, Texas. They've stacked classes, they've stacked dudes, and that's what you got to have.
You got to have dudes. You got to have them. And so now you're part of a massive conference, great visibility. You've got the resources of Phil Knight. You've got the facilities, which are top notch, and you've got kids who grow up now wanting to go to Oregon because they've seen them play in big games year after year after year. So, they've got everything you need to be able to compete in today's college football landscape. They've got it in spades. And so now, and again, winning a championship is really hard, right? So, you got to do things the right way. You got to have the resources, but then you're going to have a little bit of good fortune on your side, meaning staying healthy and not losing key guys, and then having the ball bounce your way a couple of times in those big games, and you'll be in a position to make it happen. But the way the playoff is set up now, like, you can have a great season, win your conference, and then all of a sudden you got to get through. Look at the pathway you might have to go to win a national title. Look at Indiana last year. They had to take out Alabama, and then you move on and you face Oregon. Then you got to take out a team like Miami. Like, that's a tough path. It's tough.
It is. It's a grind. It's a gauntlet, and it lasts all the way until January 25th, which is insane, as we discussed before. Well, Chad, you've been incredibly generous with your time, and I've enjoyed this conversation so much. My brother would stop giving me salmon if I didn't ask you this question.
Yes.
What the heck is the deal with the Blazers? Are they going to get this thing figured out? I mean, this is a team that's been in town since 1972 when Roland Todd was the coach and Leo Marty was the trainer. And now they're talking like it might all blow up. Are they going to get this figured out?
I think so. The idea of someone taking the Blazers out of town it makes my skin crawl. So what I can tell you is that what I discovered in my research on the negotiations that took place in Raleigh when Tom Dundon took over the Hurricanes is it got very difficult. There were feelings that were hurt on both sides, but they eventually got the deal done, and now things are thriving there with the Hurricanes. And we're seeing the same pathway here. The great thing is that the state, the city, and the county in less than a year all agreed on the term sheet to offer up to $600 million for the renovations, and now they're going to have to work through some difficult negotiations over the next 4 months for that December deadline to be able to come to an agreement and get the new lease. But I do think it's going to get done. I think Dundon is playing hardball right now to make sure he gets the deal that he wants. But most importantly, the league wants a team here. And if the state, city, and county are willing to offer up $600 million, the owners are not going to turn down free money like that. And I think the commissioner will end up being on the side of the state, the city, and the county, and kind of force Dundon's hand to negotiate in good faith. So I do believe the team's going to remain. I think they'll get the deal done on an extended lease, and then we can get back to just talking about basketball and ridiculous trade ideas in the trade machine. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, Chad, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Have a great evening.
Well, thanks, Dale. I appreciate it. Thank you for the invite, and keep spreading the love of college football, my friend.
All right.